Hey, what's up, internet? I realize that these types of videos are less and less popular, but it's more therapeutic for me to make them than it is entertaining for anyone to watch them, so I don't really care. It also really helps me to solidify thoughts in my head into concepts. So anyway, blah, 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 right? It's been a while since I've made one of these videos, but I realized let's get back to it. I'm just out here walking the bear, as you do, and thought, let's go ahead and make one. So the funniest part is, like, these people are going to drive around me, and they're going to be like, what's that dude doing with his camera? They probably think I'm talking to somebody on the phone. That's actually a great excuse. I'm just doing video chat with somebody. Myself. Best part is when you gotta pass somebody. Like someone's walking towards me up here. Anyway, let me get to the point. So I've had this thought come back to me in a couple of different ways. I think it finally crystallized for me. By the way, another piece of context here. A lot of times I make these videos and I talk about these points as though they're groundbreaking. And really everybody's like, yeah, Brett, duh. So there's a good chance that that's the case here. Just sometimes I'm kind of slow, late to the party. But anyway, the concept that really sunk home for me is this concept of, here's another one, car that wants to get in. This concept of training for more than what you're expected to face. More than what you are realistically going to face. So, like, some of you may know, if you followed me, that recently I've taken up kickboxing, Muay Thai, fought a couple of times, and I had this interesting experience not too long ago, because a lot of my trainers tell me there's all these habits that they try and break, things that I do that they're like, you shouldn't do it that way, or your form is bad, or all this stuff. And I always thought, yeah, well, okay, that's fine. But then I'll go watch like super high level fights, and it'll be like they're doing the stuff that my trainers are telling me not to do. So I'm kind of like, okay, so am I not supposed to do it, or am I only supposed to do it when I'm training, and then when I fight I don't have to do it? But then I watched a less high level Muay Thai fight not too long ago, and it started to click that as you improve in your skill in any particular field, any particular discipline, the rules kind of shift. But you don't get to play, let's put it this way, you don't get to play major league level baseball until you're in the major leagues, right? You don't get to play NBA level basketball until you're in the NBA. You'll notice I'm not as huge into sports, so that's probably not a very good reference, but I have personally noticed that there's a distinct difference between like college sports and professional sports. And for a long time I thought that it had to do, like I thought that college athletes seemed to be a little bit more willing to throw themselves into the game and a little bit more willing to really push a little bit harder. And then it wasn't until later that I realized that no. The only reason why you see fancy stuff in college games is because there's actually some collegiate athletes that are that much better than the others because they're amateurs. Whereas when you get to the professional level, everybody's leveled up. Everybody's at that same level. So you don't see as many crazy fancy things like in professional football as you do in, well, I'm talking about the maybe 10 college football games I watched while I was in college versus the, snippets of Super Bowls that I've seen over in the course of my life. But anyway, a lot of it, I think, the point, I think, is still there. I gotta pause the video because Wick's doing some things that I need to deal with, so hang on a sec. Alright, sorry, we're back again. Little side note, Wick, you may have seen the post that I put up yesterday, the end of an era. My Batman hat, you can see I'm not wearing it anymore. The Batman hat got destroyed by this little dork. And needless to say, yeah, a little bit of it came out just now. Oh, fix it, dude. Fix it. Come on. Good boy. I probably was TMI. You didn't want to know that, but anyway. So the point that what I was saying was, as you get to higher level sports, like higher levels in sports, everybody levels up because the field, like the barrier to entry, is much narrower. Much higher is the barrier, but the sort of field of entry, people that can get into that level, is much narrower, and so you're not able to get away with as much because you're not that much better than everybody else. You know what I mean? When you get to that level. So my point with fighting is sometimes at the early stages, like when I'm training, I can have this false sense of, well, I can get away with this stuff because of who I'm training against. So I'm the biggest guy by several tens of pounds and several inches that trains at my gym. Not that that makes me I'm not any better skill-wise. In fact, I'm probably at best middle of the line skill-wise. But because I'm bigger, I can get away with a lot of things that I shouldn't be able to get away with. So I don't really ever train or like really internalize some of those concepts. And it's because I don't hold myself accountable to that higher standard of realizing that I have more to overcome as a bigger guy, because anybody that I fight is either going to like, I'm tall, not super muscular, but I'm heavier. And so basically people I'm going to fight are either going to be shorter and really muscular or really tall. And so there's a lot of bad habits that you develop because you're almost training for the person in front of you instead of training for the person who's going to be in front of you, if that makes sense. And so, to use another analogy, I'm all dark now. See if I can change that. Nope. Here's that. Anyway, you have to deal with dark me for a bit. Here we go. We'll just go up like that. Music, right? So I don't as much anymore, but I used to actually perform on the piano, and my teachers would always get super frustrated because I'd make dumb mistakes in performances, and it took me a while, it took me most of my life, but I finally realized why. And it's because when I practice, and still when I practice on the piano, I practice until I play it perfectly once, and then I feel like I'm done. Instead of practicing until I play it perfectly 10 times in a row, then I realize that I'm close to being there. Or instead of, I practice for a week and I play it about 80% of the time and I feel okay. All right, well that's one way of doing it. But a better way would be to practice until for an entire week I can play it perfectly with no mistakes and continue to play it and 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 play it perfectly. Right? That's how you perform at perfection. And so this all kind of crystallized for me. We were out running hills the other day, of the week actually, after sparring for training, and I realized, man, I used to be in a lot better shape. Oops, sorry. And now, like, that hill was killing me. And I realized, it kind of hit home for me again. In fact, it hit home because the guys that were training us, that were putting us through that workout, were telling us, you win in a fight because you've already been through worse hell than the guy across from you could ever put you through. Like, one of the benefits, I think, of having me or somebody my size at the gym is that a lot of the smaller fighters, when we spar, they have the opportunity to work with someone who hits a lot harder. Not because I have any particular skill, I just have way more, and has much bigger reach. And so they learn to overcome obstacles that are much bigger than they'll really ever have to deal with in a real fight. But for me personally, it's the same way. There's a lot of these obstacles that you can't, basically what I'm getting at is you can't train for the feat in front of you. Like, you can't be, well, I'm telling you this, and more of the metaphor is starting to unfold for me. You can't be good at taking tests and assume that because you're good at taking tests that you're good at the material that the test is testing you on. Like, you ever when I was in high school and in college too, I don't think I learned much of anything. Like I could probably count on 2 fingers really the deep things that I learned. But I'll tell you what, I'm really good at taking tests. And that's because the skill of taking a test is rooted in knowing what's required specifically around the context of that test. And if you can beat the test, you don't really have to know the material. But beating the test doesn't actually help you if the material is what you need, right? So if we're talking about like training for a fight, being able to survive a couple rounds of pads doesn't mean you're going to win the fight. Or being able to run a hill, or knowing the best way to run a hill, or there's people having a real conversation, not like me having a conversation with myself. Like in fighting, instead of knowing how to, like being able to spar with someone who's smaller than you and beat them, but rather putting yourself in a situation where, like when I'm sparring, what I should be doing, and I tell myself this all the time, I'm just too lazy to go do it. What I should be doing is going to gyms that have bigger guys to spar with, and only spar with those guys. And I come back and I can work with the smaller people, but I can't take, it doesn't do me any good to take solace and think that I have skill because I got longer legs than the guys at my gym. Like, that's just because I know, or I'm able to take advantage of those skills. You know what I mean? And so I think the key there is just understanding you got to be able to, you have to train in life for, it's like you got to train for the end of level boss. If you're talking about like video games, don't train for the pipsqueaks in between. Like train for the big guy, train for the real thing, and train like it's going to be 100 times worse than it will be. And that's really how, in everything, how things should go. And I think that comes when it comes, you know, you just have to really be serious and take things seriously and drive forward on that. So anyway, I realized it started out a little bit more pointed than it ended, but glad to be back making videos, rambling on with no end. Hopefully somebody maybe listening to my ramblings makes some tangential connection that helps them in their life. Cool, works for me. I don't even think I really had much of a point here. So anyway, from me and the bear, peace.